House of EdTech, episode 60.
Hi, this is Natalie Crayenvanger, co-moderator of the EdBeat chat on Twitter. You are listening to the House of EdTech, the #1 podcast on my mixtape.
Support for this episode of House of EdTech comes from Domain.com. Take your teacher blog or classroom site to the next level with a top-level domain for only $9.99. That's where I purchased chrisnessy.com and all the other domains that I manage. To get yours, go to chrisnessy.com/domains. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Christopher Nessy, and the House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. My objectives include discussing technology that is changing our classrooms and schools and sharing tools and tips that you can hear about today and use tomorrow. I talk to teachers, leaders, and creators just like you and have them share their stories. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way we teach and how our students learn. And welcome back inside the 60th episode of the House of EdTech podcast. Did you guys miss me last time? Oh, well, you couldn't have really missed me because I was still here. Thank you super I don't even know what I'm saying. Thank you so much to Stacy Lindis and AJ Bianco for your House of EdTech takeover. It was a lot of fun to be in the hot seat, so to speak, and be on the other side of things. And it was fun to edit and put that episode together. And Stacy and AJ, you guys did a great job, as I told you on Voxer and here publicly on the podcast. So thank you so much. But this is going to be a straightforward, regular old episode of the House of EdTech podcast. Now, if this is your first episode, hey, there is no time like the present. There are only 59 other episodes for you to catch up on. And I know that in the last couple of months and weeks that I've picked up new listeners from going to conferences and talking about podcasting. So if you are a first-time listener, welcome, welcome, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad that you've decided to check it out. Now, for the new listener, here's what you can expect in this episode. I'm going to share my conversation with Jennifer Gonzalez, who is a podcaster and education coach, and she's just an all-around awesome person in education who I had the pleasure of meeting at ISTE in 2015. And I'm also going to be sharing a House of EdTech VIP, and that's somebody awesome who I think you should connect with, who I'm connected with, and you can learn from them, pick their brain, and I just like to do that in each episode so that way everybody's personal learning network can grow a little bit bigger, and I can help facilitate that. Now, two segments that I normally do that I'm not going to be including in this episode due to the awesome length and great information that is shared by Jennifer Gonzalez. In this episode, I'm not going to have an EdTech thought or an EdTech recommendation, but get your pens and pencils ready because my conversation with Jennifer Gonzalez is packed to the gills with all sorts of EdTech recommendations, tools. So it's kind of like a mini App Smackdown. So be ready for that coming up in just a few minutes. Before I get to that conversation with Jennifer, I do want to share some feedback and some updates. So some feedback real quick. These are two recent iTunes reviews, so thank you in advance, and here they are. Quote, and this comes from ELA Teach RM1, that's this person's iTunes handle, and they said, quote, if you only have time to listen to one EdTech podcast, choose the House of EdTech. It is helpful, informative, and practical. Every podcast provides an EdTech tip, a VIP, and an informative interview session. Download the most current episode and give it a listen. I bet you'll download the rest of the episodes to give it another listen. Thank you so much, ELA Teach RM1. Please, since now you've heard that I shouted you out here, please reach out on Twitter and let me know who you are, because your iTunes username doesn't really tell me much, and I would love to say thank you even more than just reading your review here on the podcast. The second iTunes review comes from JKC386, and they said, "Thank you for producing this informative podcast. Thank you, too, for all the work you do to make it so polished." Well, thank you very much. That is very encouraging, and I do my best here every 2 weeks to create an episode that is worthwhile and worth listening to and informative. So thank you, JKC386. And same thing, please reach out and connect with me on Twitter, at Mr. Nessie, or on Voxer, or email me. And if you who are listening right now, if you leave an iTunes review, put your name in the review, your website. I'd be happy to share your website, your Twitter handle, and let people know who you are. And thank you so much for those iTunes reviews. They are so very helpful, and they encourage me to continue to do what I'm doing here. Now, that's not the only piece of feedback. We also got a little bit of audio feedback here on the House of EdTech feedback hotline. So let's go to the answering machine.
You have one new message.
All right, Mr. Nessie, this is Derek Larson with EdTechBabble.net. I thought I'd just call in and let you know that I thought the last week's episode where Mr. AJ Bianco and Stacy Lindis took over the House of EdTech was fabulous. What a cool idea. And you're right, what a great way to have you be interviewed without having to ask yourself questions. I love the idea that they came in and took it over. Obviously, there was some planning there, but I like the fact that you had that fun aspect to it, and it just made it a nice, different personality. I really like what you're doing with the show as of late, where you're trying to bring in different voices so that you almost giving yourself a co-host feel without actually having an actual co-host. Really kind of changes things up, and like I said, makes it a little more fun, a little more inviting. So just want to let you know I think the show is going great, and I appreciate the hard work you put into it. Thank you for all you do in the world of podcasting and giving us information to kind of learn from, as well as even if we're just listening for entertainment purposes, I think we can still be learning. So thanks again, and I'm loving the show.
Thank you so much for your feedback, Derek, and I'm so glad that you and I get to talk on a regular basis, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on episode 59. Again, if you haven't listened to it, you can go over and check out Stacy and AJ taking over the podcast to interview me, and that's going to be over at chrisnessie.com/59. And if you want to send in audio feedback, you can do that on Voxer. You can do that through the website, chrisnessie.com, where you can click the SpeakPipe button, or you can do what Derek did, and he called the number, which is 732-903-4869. Thanks again, Derek, and to everybody who left some feedback for me this time around. Real quick, also, before we get to Jennifer Gonzalez, Patreon supporters, my awesome supporters, thank you, and I would just like to shout out Peggy, Dan, Jeff, and Mark for being awesome supporters of the podcast. And if you are interested in contributing to what I'm doing here, you can do that by going over to chrisnessie.com/awesome, and you can learn how you can become a Patreon supporter of the podcast. Also, I am happy to say here, as I release this episode on Mother's Day 2016, I, this week, received my New Jersey Supervisor Certificate. Woohoo! Go me! Now it's time to put that to good use, and I am on the hunt now that I have my supervisor certificate, and I am armed with my education technology knowledge. So it's time to get it done this spring or this summer and take my career and my passion to another place. And, I'm looking forward to that. I took the 2 courses at Rowan University in leadership earlier this semester. So got A's in those courses, and I applied to the state on my own, and I'm so happy to have this new badge. I almost feel like a Boy Scout, and I got a new badge on my I wasn't a Boy Scout, so I don't know where you put the badges. I was going to say sash, but I think that's where the Girl Scouts or the Brownies put theirs. So I don't know where Boy Scouts put their badges, but I have another badge. And as I said, I'm releasing this episode today on Mother's Day, so from the bottom of my heart, first and foremost, happy Mother's Day to my own mom, who doesn't listen to the podcast, but I will tell her that I gave her a shout out and how much I love her. So I love you, Mom. And to the mother of my children, Caitlin, who has been on the show a number of times, thank you so much for being my wife. That takes a lot of work and effort on your part. And we are, raising two wonderful boys, Miles and Colton, the monkey and the crab. So thank you so much for being an awesome mom to our two sons. And happy Mother's Day to you if you are a mom, or happy Mother's Day to your mom. So thanks to all the moms for everything you do. But that's enough out of me. You didn't come here really to listen to me. You came here because Jennifer Gonzalez is here on the podcast. So here, you know what? Without further ado, here is my conversation with Jennifer Gonzalez. Today we are talking with Jennifer Gonzalez, who is a speaker, coach, consultant, and an author. She's a former middle school language arts teacher, and she also has university-level teaching experience with pre-service teachers. One of her passions is creating content for other teachers. Her creative efforts led to the creation of the Cult of Pedagogy website and podcast. Jennifer is working to create a vibrant, encouraging, stimulating community of teachers supporting each other toward excellence. She believes we can reach across the limits of geography, find each other, and that there is no limit to the amazing things that we can accomplish in education. Oh yeah, she's also a national board certified teacher, she's married, and she has awesome children. So welcome to the House of EdTech, Jennifer Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, Chris. I am really, really happy to be here.
Awesome. And I am so glad to have you here because this is like a special crossover event because we're both on the Education Podcast Network. And you are on the small list of people who are on the show that I've actually met in person. It was a really fun time when we met at ISTE in 2015, and we sat on the floor talking podcasting.
Yeah, you wanted us to nerd out and start talking microphones, which I thought was so fantastic.
It was a lot of fun.
Very few people in the world that I can actually talk about microphones with.
And we do that on a regular basis because we're in a great Voxer group where we get to talk podcasting and education. So it's a lot of fun having learned from you even prior to this conversation.
Oh, thank you. Likewise to you. You actually just helped me out with a funky sounding file today. So yeah, it's great to have the connection with you because there's just very few people that do what we do in education and with podcasting and have such similar audiences. So I'm excited that I'm actually on your show now as a guest.
It's been a long time coming because, again, we've been talking for a number of months. So why don't we dive right in to what we're going to be talking about tonight? Okay,
good.
So the reason you're here is because, one, you're phenomenal and awesome and so many other accolades that I could go on. And in fact, as I prepared your introduction, I said to myself, I could write multiple pages on how to introduce her and all the things that you've done. So I almost feel bad that I had to trim it down to just what I said.
That's very flattering. Thank you, Chris.
So the reason you're here is because we're going to be talking about tech tools that every teacher should have. And that stems from your latest project, which makes you put on that author hat. So your latest book is called The Teacher's Guide to Tech. And this is actually, in theory, volume 2, because you did this in 2015. And now you've updated this massive resource for teachers who want to integrate technology. So before we get into the tools, can you talk a little bit about your new book, The Teacher's Guide to Tech?
Yeah, well, I'd love to talk about what got me to doing it in the first place. It was when my website was pretty young still, and I did my very first reader survey to find out what the people in my audience needed and what they were struggling with, because I knew that would help me decide what I wanted to write blog posts about, and maybe if I ever wanted to create products, what types of things they were looking for. And so many teachers talked about struggling with technology. And one of the things they said the most often was that they just felt overwhelmed by it. They knew they should be trying to implement more technology and integrate it with their instruction, but they just could not wrap their brains around all the stuff that was available. And they said they felt like there were more and more and more tools turning up every year or every month, and they just didn't have the time to do the research that they needed to do to figure out which tools were going to be the best for them. And so my first thought was, okay, I'm just going to write an epic blog post about this And I'm just going to kind of break the tools into categories. I'm going to say, okay, here are some other tools that are kind of like PowerPoint. And I'll tell them a little bit about like Prezi and Haiku Deck and stuff like that. And then here are some other tools that do similar things to Microsoft Word. And then here are some other tools. And so I'll just kind of break them into categories. And that list turned into a 210-page PDF because I started adding features. I thought, well, if I'm going to tell them about the tool, I should link them to the tool's website so they can quickly get there. And wouldn't it be great if I could also link them to a YouTube video that demonstrates it? And I should probably talk a little bit about what these tools can actually do for their instruction. So I'll need a little introduction to each section. And maybe it would be nice to have a screenshot that shows the tool in action. And so it just kept growing and growing to where it just became a book. And I can't really necessarily call it a book or an ebook because I finally started to call it a digital binder because it's basically a PDF that lives on your computer. And I've got it set up with a lot of internal links so that people can quickly jump from the table of contents to a page that has the tool on it, and they can jump to the glossary. So, for example, if somebody hears about a tool, if they hear somebody talking about how great Flubaroo is, and they're thinking, okay, I don't want to ask these people what Flubaroo is, but they keep talking about, I used Flubaroo. If they have this tech guide, they can actually go to the index. They don't even need to know what type of tool it is, and they can find the word Flubaroo, click on it, and go to the page that explains what that is. And then they can say, oh, okay, that's an assessment tool, and it's similar to this. And okay, I can go watch this video that shows it in action. I can see that it's free. Okay, oh, that might be something I could try. Or they could have the opposite reaction. They can go to the page and go, oh, all right, that's not something that would work for me. Instead of having to wonder. So basically what I did was all the research necessary for a teacher to make a decision about a tech tool and just tried to save them the time that it would take to do that.
I think you have accomplished that and more, because part of what I want to ask you tonight or today, whenever people are listening, is how you actually put the book together, because you mentioned the links, and because I know you gave me a copy of it. So I've been able to digitally thumb through it, and it is not short. It is massive, but so valuable. So that's part of what we're going to get into, is how you actually created the book and the technology that you used. That
I used to actually make it, you mean?
Yes. Yeah,
you're going to be shocked because everybody that I ever tell this to is completely shocked. That is a PowerPoint. It's a PowerPoint that was, so the page is oriented, portrait versus landscape. And it's set up in 8.5 by 11 size paper so that it can actually be printed on regular office paper. That in and of itself, I don't think is a huge surprise, but it's how did I actually get all those pages to link to each other? Because people will have to picture this, but there's an active sidebar, almost like it's a website, where you can click on the words that say table of contents and jump straight to the table of contents. And so there's a way in PowerPoint where you can just create internal links to other pages on a slideshow. So it's really just very hacky. I just figured out how to do it, and then I just converted the whole thing to a PDF.
I was preparing for a conversation on how to use Adobe InDesign.
Every now and then I've run across problems with it a couple times where sort of links don't transfer over that well. And I do have people continue say to me, you need to get this thing off of PowerPoint and get it into InDesign. And I think I may make that leap this year. But so much of what I've done on my website and with everything has been a product of me not wanting to spend a lot of money. So I figure out how to use the tools I have. I do a lot of illustration on my website with my blog posts, and I've had a lot of people ask me, how do you do those illustrations? I do them in MS Paint, the free software that comes with my PC. I mean, it's just the crappy, cheap, free software. And I just honestly didn't want to have to pay for good stock photography when I started my website. So I was like, I'm just going to get in there and sketch something, and I'm just going to make it work. So yeah, I am not a formally trained tech person at all. Everything that I learned in writing that book, I just learned it by going to the websites and digging around and signing up for all the free tools and trying them out. And I feel like that book is a testament that anybody can teach themselves anything. Because when I first got started, I was your basic Microsoft Word, Facebook user, and that was about the extent of my tech expertise.
Let's put our boots and gloves on.
Okay.
And why don't we dive into some of these major topics? And thank you for helping me develop what we're actually going to be talking about. Full disclosure.
I was happy to do it. I feel like even if people do not ever touch that tech guide, I want them to have some great information to walk away with. So
awesome. Bringing value to you, my House of EdTech community. I love it. So what we've broken it down, okay, you did the legwork. So what you broke down today's conversation, the categories you came up with were assessment tools, cloud storage tools, discussion tools, flipped learning tools, sign-up tools, and content curation tools. So and again, you did the work, and you basically titled this episode. So this is tech tools every teacher should have in these categories. So why don't we tackle these one at a time, and you give recommendations. I'll try and make funny jokes, and we'll have a good time. So let's take a look at the first one, assessment tools. What is one or two assessment tools that every teacher should take a look at?
Well, and actually, let me make a slight adjustment to that, because what I'm looking at here is not 6 actual specific tools that every teacher should have, but these are 6 types. Almost like when a fashionista says, "Oh, everybody should have a good little black dress, and everybody should have a great fitting pair of jeans." So it's kind of like that. I have neither. I think every teacher should have some type of an assessment tool in their arsenal. So for example, there is one that's called Formative, and a lot of people call it Go Formative because that's their website, their URL, but their actual name is Formative. Formative is just really neat, but it's really ideal for like one-to-one schools where kids are all on tablets or something like that. But the idea is, if I'm a teacher and I want, maybe I'm a geometry teacher and I want all of my students to draw, a parallel triangle. That's not even a thing, a right triangle. So they start to draw, and in the old days, I'd walk around and I'd look over everybody's shoulder, and that's fine. What Formative lets you do is to have all the kids do it on tablets, and you as the teacher, you have little mini screens of every single student's work right on your own tablet. You can watch all of them draw at the exact same time so that you can see if somebody's misstepping right away. You can say, "Jimmy, hold on a second. Let me come over there and show you." And you can assess them immediately with what they're doing. So it's just a really neat way of being a little bit more efficient with assessment. Another one I mentioned a little earlier is Flubaroo, which is just an add-on for Google. So anybody who's using the Google Education Tools now or Google Classroom kind of already has this at their disposal. They just may not have added it. But the way it works is the teacher sets up a quiz or some type of an assessment using Google Forms, and then Flubaroo grades it for them so that you sort of basically immediately get like a spreadsheet spat back at you after the kids take the quiz. You don't have to necessarily dig through the answers yourself to figure out who got which ones right or try to crunch the numbers. It crunches the numbers for you in a couple of different ways. So anytime I ask teachers about what assessment tools they love, that one comes up over and over and over again, and it is completely free and it's built in to the Google tools already, to the Google Apps for Education. So, but there are lots of them. I mean, I love HoET, which is it's a really fun way of playing like a game show style, review games with students. So I think the basic point here is that if a teacher is not using any technology at all yet to assess student learning, what they need to know is that there are a lot of really, really neat, effective, different ways that you could be using free technology to just basically get an idea of where your students are more quickly than you could with paper and pencil.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that a lot of these are quick and easy, and they will generate the data that you can then turn to a supervisor or an administrator and have printouts or at least be able to email or share data that supports data-driven instruction. You can make really effective decisions in your classroom based on some real basic information that you didn't have to calculate yourself.
Exactly. It just, you get the information more quickly. And you can also sort of do stuff with that information later instead of having a bunch of paper to deal with. You can plug those numbers into other things. So I've got a whole chapter, in the guide about assessment tools, and there's a whole bunch of them. So the ones I mentioned are just a couple of them, but I think the main thing is for teachers to kind of play around with some of them and find one that works, or even just ask around your school and see what other people are using.
Oh yeah. And variety. I mean, with all of these different categories, there's not just one tool that does one thing. They can be used in conjunction.
Yes.
And you find that different tools are better for different lessons or work for different groups of students.
Exactly.
So the next category that you talk about is a cloud storage tool. So let's make the leap and say that if someone listens to this show, they know what cloud storage is. So What is a cloud storage tool that you recommend that people give a chance to?
It's so funny because I use Dropbox and Google Drive both, and I use them for different types of things. I sort of feel like Dropbox is almost feels more secure and reliable. I don't know why I feel that way, but the fact that you can make new stuff in Google Drive means I spend more time there. I think if I want to share something with somebody, I'm likely to put it in Dropbox. But if I want to make some stuff and collaborate with somebody on a presentation or a document, I'm obviously going to do it in Google Drive because we can work on it together. And I've kind of heard that Dropbox is trying to add some of that functionality, and there are other, Microsoft has their own stuff. But honestly, I feel like if somebody has already gotten into Dropbox and Google Drive, it's a hard sell to get them anywhere else. But the reason I added this, because you're right, anybody listening to this already knows. However, if somebody listening is a tech integration specialist and you've got your sort of newbie tech phobic teachers who are like, oh, I wouldn't even know where to start. Kind of my idea with this list was, if somebody is going to start with technology, what would be a starter kit for them? What would be some basic things to get them started? And I feel like just introducing them to the idea of cloud storage and showing them how to make that work is huge. Because, you're probably talking about people who are still walking around with a lot of stuff on thumb drives and are still getting used to that idea. And so I
see teachers all the time that are walking around with 2, 3, 4, 5 flash drives on their keychain, and
yes,
the cloud is just so much nicer.
And so just to get somebody to make that leap to where it's like, you know what, you can work on this for 10 minutes in your classroom. You can walk away, go home, open it up, and you can continue to work on that exact same document without losing a breath. And somebody can smash both of your devices and that document is still going to be protected. It'll still be there. I thought I had a virus on my computer tonight. I got some sort of malware thing. And it was the first time in ever that I didn't start flipping out because I thought, you know what? Everything I have that's important is in the cloud right now. So it's not going to be a huge deal if something happens to my machine here. So I think if you're dealing with somebody who you're trying to get them started with technology, just getting them set up and to understand how cloud storage works would be a great early step to take.
I agree. Definitely understanding the concept to that new teacher. And if you're a more veteran teacher who's more comfortable with technology, maybe taking advantage of the fact that you can have multiple accounts at all these different sites and kind of rack up your massive amount of cloud storage that is available to you.
Yes. And also, let's also remember, too, that sometimes you can have a new teacher who's super tech savvy and a veteran teacher who's terrified of it. So it can go both ways. Somebody who's a very experienced teacher who's still, not willing to try a whole lot. So I really think that there's a lot of different stripes there.
So many two-way streets in education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the next topic that you suggested was, again, for this arsenal, this weaponry that we're going to carry around, would be a discussion tool.
Yep. So, and the ones that I kind of added there were Today's Meet and Voxer. And I feel like these two really serve two completely different purposes. So Today's Meet, I think, is just so great for classroom discussion, to have that as a back channel and to just show a teacher how something like Today's Meet worked. And I'm assuming that your audience probably knows, but just as a review, it's basically just sort of like a live chat room that you set up. It's like a blank website kind of where people can go in and enter comments, and it's a long kind of comment thread, but it's like a private room that only the people who you give the link to can go into. It sort of reminds me of those little side instant message chats that we used to have with like American Online and stuff like that. But it's your whole class can be invited into it. And so one of the things that's really nice with something like Today's Meet is that I've had a lot of teachers say lately that they still have trouble when they give students a link with the kids actually typing the link into their search bar correctly and going to the exact right website. Even if they use a link shortener, sometimes they say the kids will mess up. I found that if I just open up a Today's Meet and have everybody go in there, I can dump whatever links I want in there and everybody can click out of that and go to the exact website I want them to. So sometimes you don't even need to use it as a discussion tool. Sometimes it can just be a convenient place to link people from one spot to another. But it can also be used as a great in-class discussion tool. If you've got a movie going or some other kind of a separate activity, to have that as a back channel for students to have conversations. It's just a really interesting concept. For its simplicity, I just absolutely love Today's Meet. I don't think they need to change a thing about it.
Oh no, I'm a huge fan of Today's Meet. They used to be a sponsor of the show here, and I think people can still go to todaysmeet.com/House of EdTech, and definitely take advantage of their teacher tools, which I think is like $5 a month to get you some advanced features like being able to save your chat transcript, and some more features to take advantage of in the classroom for moderating the chats and, keeping the experience positive for your students.
Nice. Very nice. See, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm going to go check that out too. So the other tool that I mentioned for discussion tools is Voxer, which I'm pretty sure that you've had the same experiences with Voxer that I have, which for anybody who's listening who's never heard of it, it's just a smartphone app. It's if you imagine voicemail, but way, way easier. So Chris and I are in a podcaster's Voxer chat together. And all it is a room that people have been invited to on our phones. And you press a button and you talk. And when you press the button again, what you just said is recorded and everybody in that group can hear it. And it's chronological. So what I'll do is I'll get in my car. I will open it up. I will press play on the last message I didn't listen to. And it's like I'm listening to a podcast, except it's a bunch of different people talking about different things. If I have something to say, I grab my phone, I hit the button, and I add something. And it has been such a great way to get to know. I've got whole friendships with people I've never met in person, all because of Voxer. And you would think that it would be similar to sort of like participating in a Twitter chat or something like that. It just is not. Being able to hear somebody's voice and all of what comes with a person's voice in terms of the nuances and the emotion, and it is just a way, way more intimate experience. And I feel like teachers could be using this because teachers don't have enough time to meet with each other and really collaborate and really talk about some issues. I was a middle school teacher and we used to meet as a team and we would talk about our students and some issues that this one had today and what are we going to do about this situation. If we had Voxer, we could just be doing it while we were, either in our cars or I hear people talking on Voxer when they're on their treadmills, or you can get caught up on a walk. And we could be getting so much more done asynchronously, so we don't have to all be in the same room together. We could be collaborating over the course of a weekend. Whenever you get to it, you can participate. And I just think it is such an amazing, amazing tool. And I think for teachers, it could be fantastic because you can it's great for professional development, really within your school and even outside of your school.
And from my perspective, I mean, Twitter took my professional development and my personal and professional learning to one level. Getting involved in Voxer took it from, good and made it great because again, every point you made, being able to connect with people who maybe you've never seen, but now you have that intimate connection by hearing their voice. And even if you're not going to use it professionally, tell your friends about it. You could use it with family members.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's such a time saver in so many ways. Yeah.
I got my wife turned on to it. She originally had said, it's a stupid app. It's not worth my time. But now she's got friends of hers who she's met through photography and running. And, she goes on and she'll do literally 10-minute Voxes with people. Yeah. And she'll sit there and listen to them and have these conversations. And now I get on her, why do you talk for so long? Because I'm used to doing it with teachers where it's in and out, a minute and a half, you want to get your message out there.
Yeah. It's funny though. I'm in some groups with other teachers where it's just the culture of that particular group. we've got some people that'll leave 6-7 minute Voxes, and it's like, sorry guys, I got a lot to say on this. You can skip over me if you want to. I've been in one Voxer group with other teachers. We've been talking for about 1.5 years now. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and I've never met any of them in person. But anyway, so I cannot say enough good things about Voxer, and it's a bit of a learning curve, even though it's not hard. I think it's an adjustment just in a person's attitude. My sister lives in Thailand. I'm trying to get her on all the time because we can talk literally for free and easily and quickly. And she's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I'll get to it when I can. I'm just like, come on, jump onto the Voxer train with me.
Yeah, get on, all aboard. Let's go.
Yeah. All right. So that's the discussion tools.
Cool. Next up would be flipped learning tools, and flipped learning and flipping your lessons and turning your classroom on its head and turning it inside out, whatever you want to say, is very popular and buzzy right now.
It is buzzy. Yes. And it's the thing that I think is exciting about flipped learning is that it is evolving into so many different kinds of things now. I think when it first came out, there were some flipped learning purists. I was actually attacked on Edutopia. I did a guest post about what ultimately was actually blended learning, but doing a flip in the classroom so that you didn't have to worry about kids not having technology at home. And somebody just got all over me and said, that is not true flipped learning. The video viewing should be only at home, and then the interaction should be only at school. And now I think people are opening themselves up to all different kinds of possibilities. And so just the basic idea is that we do not need to be standing in front of the class delivering instruction, really not much at all anymore. If there's any way at all for us to pre-package the content delivery piece of teaching into videos or self-paced lessons that students can take on their own, then we can spend our class time with hands-on stuff, with discussion, it doesn't abdicate us from any kind of teaching. What it does is it gives us more interaction with our students instead of just delivering information. And so teachers are using this to allow kids to do self-paced learning where they kind of like take off on their own so they can differentiate for different students. So anytime you can take that instruction and put it into some kind of like a video form or something like that, you're freeing yourself up to give kids more individualized attention. And the body of tools that is starting to grow to help teachers do that is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So two that I think are great, among others, I think I have like 6 of them or something listed in the book, but one is EdPuzzle. So EdPuzzle allows a teacher to find a video on YouTube or on Vimeo. And if it looks like it's going to be helpful to them for instruction, what they can do is they can wrap that video up in some interactive activities, like they can ask discussion questions, they can ask quiz questions. And so the student is not just assigned to watch this video, they can actually engage with it a little bit. So it turns it into a lesson. And then the other flipped learning tool that I really like right now is called Versal, Versal. And that's actually sort of a whole course creation platform, but it's free and it's beautiful. The design is absolutely gorgeous. And it allows teachers to really sort of build courses. So you can type in some text that you would want students to read. You can embed a video. You can embed a quiz. You can add other types of interactive elements. You can add parts where the students would actually have to do some things also. And you can add separate modules for the course so that you could do like an entire unit or even break an entire year down over the course of this platform and kind of have it all in one place, which is, I think, something that teachers are struggling with right now because they feel like, okay, well, for this one lesson, I can have them watch this video, but I've got it over here and I got to send them a link to this, and then I've got to do this. And Versal is a place where you really can kind of combine all the elements into a nice lesson. So I think if I were a teacher and I were just getting started with flipped learning, that might be a great place to start because you're going to start in this really nice, seamless environment. And if I'm a teacher who's already been doing flipped learning, but I've never really gotten it all together, again, a really nice place to go to get it all together.
Versal is something that I hadn't heard of prior to seeing it in the book. And I actually took some time because I have 2 math teachers that I work with who are very interested in technology and tech integration and flipping. So, they have like the trifecta there. So when I saw this, I immediately went in the next day and I was like, Jamie, Joe, you need to check out Versal, because I'd already showed them Edpuzzle, and I was like, check this out. And they both did and people can't see this because this is audio. They did minds were blown, and I just did my head blew up thing.
It's gorgeous, right?
Yes, very much so.
It is. And they've got these things, I can't remember what they call them, but they're almost like little plugins that you can throw in. So if you're teaching anatomy, you can actually pull in this really beautiful sort of body image that actually has kind of interactive elements on it. It's hard to explain, but it's pretty powerful. And I'm shocked that it's free, really.
Don't jinx it.
I know. So yes, so for flipped learning, those are two that I would definitely recommend people check out.
Awesome. And the next category is sign-up tools. And this stood out to me because this is not something that registered with me as something I needed to even think about, because maybe it's just the way my mind works with this. So go ahead, take it away. Sign-up tools, a couple of examples, and the value of a sign-up tool in your arsenal.
Yes. Okay. Now this one is completely practical. It's not instructional at all, but the time that it would save teachers and parents. And now I'm speaking as a parent, because in the last week or two, one of my kids' teachers sent an email to 41 people asking us to volunteer at the school spring fling and asking us to reply all, letting her know which shift we would like to work. And so then for the next 3 or 4 days, my inbox was just completely flooded with people replying all and saying which shift they would like to work. And I thought, this is nuts. And this is something I had thought years and years ago. I thought, surely there's something online that can help us with this. And that was when I found Volunteer Spot, which is a website. And it's a very simple concept. As a teacher, you go in, you set up your event, whatever it is, whether it's parent-teacher conferences, and you want to say, okay, I've got 4 slots this afternoon, and then I've got 8 slots this next afternoon. Here they are. You pick the one you want, you sign up, and then it is no longer available. Or I need people to work these shifts at this event. I need people to bring soda and sign up to deliver pizza or whatever it is. And then your hands are off of it. Then you send teachers the link. They go to the event page. They pick the time or the thing that they want to do. Once they've signed up, it's no longer available. And Volunteer Spot will then email those people a few days before the event to remind them. There's no need anymore to send out these emails to everybody asking them to reply all. And so Volunteer Spot is one. Another one is called Sign Up Genius. And they both do the same thing. They let you organize an activity and have there be places for people to sign up.
So basically, for those of you listening, if you really like email, don't use these tools, because you can continue to do it in a way that makes no sense.
I think it would just save teachers so much stress and time, just getting you. I mean, and the thing is with all these things, you got to spend a little time in that uncomfortable space where you don't know how to do it. And it's slower than it would be to do it the old way, but just getting over that hump. And then it's just so fast. And then everything's way, way, way faster.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of uncomfortable space, because that's where I spent most of the last 35 years. So I am no stranger to that. So definitely people jump in, check it out. And that's the theme of this whole show the whole time. Yep. Just try. You have nothing to lose.
Exactly.
And the final area would be content curation. Now, curation is like a dirty word around here, because I've done presentations literally titled "Stop Curating and Start Creating." So I will lift the embargo on curation, and go ahead. You talk about how people can curate.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I think this is a problem for everybody and not just teachers, but teachers are constantly collecting resources. We find articles on something that we think are interesting. We read blogs. 2 of them, first of all, Pinterest is one of them. And any teacher that's using Pinterest to kind of keep track of this stuff, I've heard people call it social media, but I really think it's content curation more than anything. You're gathering resources into boards. Yeah. Do you?
Definitely, because I don't get the social aspect other than sending private messages to send a pin to somebody.
Yeah. And that's very awkward. It doesn't really work. So it's you're collecting stuff and keeping it organized. So there are other ones that are kind of like that too, because Pinterest really only works with stuff that has an actual image, and not everything has an image. If you've ever tried to pin something that doesn't have an image associated with it, you'd see it's just this very awkward patchwork quilt looking image that Anyway, it's a mess. So there are other tools. One of them is called Diigo, Diigo, which is really good for academic uses. So if you're really sort of researching a topic and finding sort of university academic articles on stuff, you can create these outlines on Diigo where you can link to these different articles, and you can actually go into the article online and highlight it the way that you would with a print article. And Diigo will save your highlights so that the next time you go back to that article through Diigo, it will place your highlights right where you left them. And you can put little Post-it notes on it also, little notes to yourself. Another one that I think is sort of the other end of the spectrum is called Symbaloo, which is Symbaloo, which is kind of just like these little picture chiclets. And you can link them to kind of anything. You can create these little boards with these little teeny squares. And one square can lead to, the New York Times, and another one can lead to a blog post on a certain topic. And another one can lead to where you go to check your sports scores or whatever. And you can create different boards similar to Pinterest, but not as text heavy. It's just these little teeny icons.
I've always likened Symbaloo to visual bookmarking, similar to the icons when you bookmark something in Chrome, Firefox, just you get the icon of the website. Exactly.
And you can actually customize your little icons too. Sometimes they automatically populate, and sometimes you can just customize with any picture you want to. So with so many of these tools, the longer you dig in, the more custom you can make them for yourself. As teachers, we need some way to organize the information that we find online. And I think curation is a very valuable skill to teach students also as they continue to move through the digital world. I'm sure their own filing system in their heads or on their computers is just kind of a mess. So showing them how to kind of get that stuff organized with some kind of bookmarking system or curation system is just a really good skill to have.
So all in all, we have discussed 6 different topics and thrown out at least 12 tools, probably closer to 20 or 25, all that appear in your book.
Yes.
Which is, I think, over 200.
The book has, I think, 130 tech tools. It's 30 different categories, and it's 130 different tech tools, but I don't have it in front of me, but it's over 100. Yeah. I don't know if it's 200. It's 255 pages.
Okay, so that's where I was getting from. It's over 200 pages.
Yes. But the point of it is definitely not to read it cover to cover. It's meant to be there's some, I think, some very, very good introductory material and some sort of thoughts at the beginning about, how to handle technology if you're starting to feel overwhelmed and how different teachers use it. One of the points I try to make is that no teacher uses all of the tech all of the time. And I think somebody who's just getting their feet wet is afraid they're expected to know it all and do it all. And that's not true. So anyway, but yeah, it's a big book.
And for everybody listening, Jennifer was kind enough to set up a place where you all can go purchase this book if you are interested, either individually or if you are somebody who makes more important decisions in your school or school district. You can get the site license or purchase copies in bulk. And you can do that by going to chrisnessy.com/teacher-tech-book. And that is going to put you right on Jennifer's store page where you can pick up a copy of her tech tools and the guide. And it's going to be a fantastic addition to either your classroom or your school. So thank you for that, Jennifer. You are also a podcaster, and you have an awesome podcast called The Cult of Pedagogy. And that's your website. Please pimp your podcast for my audience, because I know some of them do listen to it. And if they're not, they need to. So please tell them what it's about and why they should listen.
So my podcast is, it's a lot like my website. Tech is only a small piece of what I do. And I am a former teacher, and I also train teachers, as you talked about earlier on. And I just feel like it is my mission in life to help teachers do their work better. And so in some of my episodes, I talk real practical. I'll do an entire episode just on discussion strategies you can use with your students. But then other times I will interview people. Sometimes I'll interview teachers about certain methods that they use with their students. And then other times, for me, one of my favorite episodes is episode 4, where I interviewed the mother of a child with autism, because I really wanted to know how school looked from her perspective. in terms of how she dealt with her child's teachers, how she felt about the way her child got treated in certain situations. And it was such an emotional and enlightening interview. So I really try to attack the topic of teaching from just about every angle. I'm very interested in relationships between teachers and the emotions associated with teaching, how our egos get in the way. If your listeners are interested in teaching in a very holistic sense beyond the things that are associated with technology, then it would definitely be worth their time to come and have a listen. I am only up to episode 39, but I aspire to get to episode 60 someday. That's awesome.
Again, it's a fantastic podcast. And again, you're up to episode 39.
Mm-hmm.
By the time this comes out, you will have more episodes out for people to listen to because you're connected and you're out there. What are the ways that my listeners can connect with you and continue to learn from you and engage you in conversation?
So pretty much any time, if they just start typing Cult of Pedagogy, which is PEDAGOGY, they will find me. My Twitter handle is @Cult of Pedagogy. My Instagram handle is @Cult of Pedagogy. I have a very nice, big, thriving Facebook audience, which I know is dying everywhere else, but we're doing fine where we are. So it's just Cult of Pedagogy on Facebook. I'm starting to do a weekly Periscope because I get a lot of reader email asking me for advice on stuff, and I just couldn't keep up with it. So I am now doing Periscope. Right now it's on Tuesday nights, where I will just talk for about 15, 20 minutes answering a reader question, and it's really fun.
As of the time we are recording this, I saw you post that, and I hope my retweet helped you get some people to participate in your Periscope.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, if people just basically Google Cult of Pedagogy, it's cultofpedagogy.com. I've been able to get that name just on pretty much everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, Jennifer.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chris.
And thank you again, Jennifer, for coming on to the House of EdTech. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and also a pleasure to have you as a part of the Education Podcast Network. Now, a little bit about the network. Since the last episode aired, the Education Podcast Network celebrated its 1-year anniversary. We had our birthday party, and to celebrate the 1-year anniversary, I hosted a over 3-hour blab on April 29th, where from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern, I invited on as many of the podcast hosts who were available to come on and, for 20 minutes or so, talk about their podcast, connect with their listeners, and it was a really good time. I will include a link in the show notes if you want to go and check that out and hear Jennifer talk more about the Cult of Pedagogy, or perhaps you'd be interested in learning more about Jethro Jones and Transformative Principal. The Dads and Ed guys were on. One Dad and Ed. Thank you to Josh Allen for being available. Who else was on? I should have thought about this before I wanted to talk about it. But check the link in the show notes. Those are just a couple of shout outs. Teresa Steger from Principally Speaking came on. Jessica and Spike were not available. So there you go. And real quick, the reason that I didn't put in the other segments was because that conversation with Jennifer was a little longer than I usually do in these episodes, and I debated breaking it up and moving part of it into a future episode, or even coming back in 2 weeks with like another half of it. And I said, forget it. People will listen to it. So if you haven't listened to it, or I don't even know if you listened to it, getting through it in one sitting. If you did, that's awesome. But it was worth it. And I didn't want to break it up because that's just not something that I've done here on the show before, and I wasn't comfortable doing it now. But thank you again to Jennifer for coming on, and on we go. And we have to meet a VIP for this episode. And now it's time for this episode's House of EdTech VIP. Congratulations to Miss Alyssa Miller. Alyssa is an educational technology specialist who works in Middletown, New Jersey for Middletown Township Public Schools. She is like Rutgers through and through. She has her bachelor's in psychology, a master's in teaching, and a master's in education in counseling psychology, all from Rutgers University. And she also has her supervisor certificate that she also recently got from Rowan University. She presents workshops and collaborates with teachers on digital citizenship, Nearpod, BrainPop, digital storytelling, and Minecraft. At her school, she works with a group of dedicated fifth graders for an after-school coding club, so that's very cool, as coding is very valuable to kids, and a lot of young people are getting into it. And Alyssa is also a certified Google trainer, and she regularly provides training to staff on Google Apps and other tools and strategies for integrating technology effectively into the classroom. Looking for a VIP? What more could you ask for? You need to connect with Alyssa Miller. She is on Twitter, and her username is EdTechInHeels. That's right, EdTechInHeels, EdTechInHeels. Congratulations, Alyssa. You are a House of EdTech VIP. And that's going to do it for this episode of the House of EdTech. I hope you didn't miss me doing the whole show last time. It was good to be back in the host chair for this episode. So, what are we going to do here to close out this episode? Why don't we thank our sponsor? Thank you to Domain.com for supporting this episode of the podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by grabbing your next domain from Domain.com. And to help me get a little credit for that, you want to go to chrisnessy.com/domains, and then you can grab your $9.99 domain to take your blog, your website, to another level. Instead of having, myblog.somebodyelseswebsite.com, you can get your awesome website.com or .net or .club or .pizza. Whatever you want. It's your website. As far as this episode goes, hey, let's keep this conversation going. Go over to the website and get to the show notes. You're going to go to chrisnessy.com/60. The show notes for this episode are going to contain all the links and information shared by Jennifer Gonzalez today. And you can pick up a copy of her book by going to chrisnessy.com/teacher-tech-book. And again, the Teacher's Guide to Tech 2016 is a massive resource that is well worth its weight in gold. And it's not going to cost you gold. Now, as far as everything else goes, of course, I'm going to want to connect with you, and I want to hear your thoughts on the information and resources that Jennifer and I talked about. Or, if there are other episodes that you've listened to and you haven't shared your thoughts yet, well, let's get on that. Go to chrisnessy.com and click Share Feedback. That's going to give you my email and all the ways that you can connect with me. The fastest, that's going to be Twitter. So connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Nessie, and any tweet that you send out related to the show, use the hashtag House of EdTech. Now, if you enjoy the show, and I certainly hope that you do, and you wouldn't get this far if you didn't, I'd like you to do two things. Number one, tell somebody. Word of mouth is the best way to share great podcasts you love, whether it's this show or any other show that you listen to. Also, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Your rating and review will help keep the podcast front and center for others to discover and enjoy. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be speaking with Stephanie Hessline from New Jersey, from Middletown, and episode number 61 is going to come your way on May 22nd, 2016. Till next time, thanks for joining me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult, just give it a try. The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.